Meta family, I've got the chance of writing and giving my impressions on the Sondors Metacycle thanks to an anonymous owner who was so gracious to lend me his time and his pretty cool modded meta. What do you think about it? Pretty interesting mods he's done so far. You've already seen a video or two surfacing on the internet of owners writing their Metacycle. So today, I'm not just going to bore you with another one of those. I'm going to offer you a more focused review of the Metacycle. So, not to draw out this video, I promise to minimize the fluff. Here's what we'll discuss today. We're going to look at the lock and unlock procedure because it would definitely have been more straightforward with, a manual. We're going to test the alarm and security system for loudness and efficiency. We'll address the battery removal and charging issue. We'll cover the perceived and GPS recorded 0 to 60 performance in regular and in sports modes. We'll talk about the strange behavior of the Metacycle while in sports mode. We'll touch on how long exactly the Metacycle sustains peak power, what the true top speed is, whether it has regen braking or no, ride comfort and suspension, and whether it is adjustable, what the Metacycle actually sounds like, phone fit in the wireless charging compartment. Yeah, this one's a bit of a bummer for me. And then we'll go over my final thoughts as to what I liked and what I did not like about the Sondors Metacycle. So get comfortable, grab a snack, or pop me over to the corner of your screen if you're at work, and let's get this started. Are you ready? Let's do this. Okay, so locking and unlocking the Metacycle for the owner at first was definitely a hassle to figure out without a manual. But after a few times turning it on, we actually got the hang of it. And then you realize it's so easy to get, a child could do it. I had the benefit of the owner explaining to me visually, so I'll do the same here for you. First, you tap the unlock button to unlock it, then, as long as you're close to it, you press the power button above the phone compartment on the bike itself to engage it. Now, to disengage it, you press that button again, and then, to lock the bike in place, you simply hit the lock button on the key fob. Now, the Metacycle senses when the key fob is in proximity as well as when it's not, so when you move far enough away from the Meta, and by the way, it doesn't have to be very far for this to happen, the Metacycle locks itself automatically. To engage the Meta, as in to be able to set it to drive or reverse, you will have to press the button on the bike itself or you won't be able to ride it. If there's an auto start feature on the key fob, well, we haven't been able to find it. Now, let's talk about the alarm and security on the Metacycle. While I like the security lock mechanics built into the motor of the Metacycle, I wasn't thrilled, however, to realize how low the alarm sound itself was. I was expecting a lot more of a kick than it gave, but let's talk about those mechanics I mentioned earlier. So, when the alarm is engaged, the Metacycle will screech on sufficient contact, and if you attempt to move the Metacycle out of place, the motor will counter the motion and keep it from being displaced, like so. I thought it was a cool feature that they worked into the motor. The alarm, however, it sounded uninvasive, shallow, and hardly startling. You'd be hard-pressed to hear something like this from inside of a Starbucks, say in a loud metropolitan area on a busy day. Honestly disappointed at that. It's so low, it's actually quite alarming. But let's move on to the battery. I didn't test it out for myself and took the word of the owner for a fact, and it's not hard to test it for oneself anyway. But the battery charge time is about low charge to 80% in a good couple of hours, so it's pretty true to Sondors' claims. But contrary to said claims, it is just not advisable to remove it. Well, Sondors says it is, but it's not in the way it was marketed to be. and the way it's removable right now, even though Sondors says it is with the provided tools, it is honestly not advisable. And that is because the screw holes are not durable, and so the more you attempt to unscrew the battery loose to charge it away from your Metacycle, the looser and less secure it eventually becomes each time you put it back in, which itself renders this entire procedure more and more dangerous as time goes. And quite frankly, it's a bummer that the new way to remove and charge is just not nearly as user-friendly as it was originally advertised. So what to do here? Honestly, if you live on a higher floor in an apartment, then you'd have to figure out a new charging routine or workaround that accommodates charging the battery while it's in your Metacycle. And that's quite the drawback for many. I myself, in an apartment in LA, am finding this quite cumbersome. Now, before we take the Metacycle out for a spin, I want to talk about the handling and weight. Sondors built the Metacycle bars like an e-bike, so the handlebars are narrower, and you do feel that in the way the bike handles. While it's not the weightiest of machines to ride, the thin frame is rather heavy since it was sandcasted to save costs, which also explains the rough finish and undulations, especially in the interior linings, since it's essentially like lower precision mold compared to lighter, higher resolution injection molding, which would have actually kept the Metacycle at the former promised 200-pound weight. Alright, enough with that. Let's take it out on the road for a ride and test how quick it goes, and then we'll talk about how it feels. We opted to go for the numbers we got from our GPS speed test over the Metacycle's reading itself. So whatever speed we end up with in between the GPS and the odometer is a sweet spot we'll go by. GPS may be a bit on the latent side, while the odometer will most likely be a certain percentage optimistic over the true speed. Also, sorry, but the Metacycle odometer was hardly visible in the sun, so I'll be placing the reading on the screen in post-edit. So the Metacycle should be doing 0 to 60 in about 8 to 9 seconds, not too far from what Sondors advertised, but it doesn't. On takeoff, you start noticing around the 40 miles per hour mark or so that the initial torque boost starts to die out, and while it continues accelerating, it hauls much slower from that point on. So, just as most electric vehicles, there's some software limitation at play on the motor performance. By the time you reach 60 miles per hour, after it draws out through the high 50s, it's already been past 8 to 9 seconds onto more like over 10 seconds. Now, the 0 to 60 test definitely yielded different outcomes for me than from the owner. While he reliably got 10 to 11 seconds over enough tests, I got more like 16. He's around 150 pounds and I'm around 250 pounds, so there's a whole 100-pound difference at play here. If Sondors had never promised 0 to 60 in 6 seconds, then I would be fine with the average quickness of the Metacycle, but they did. And that is their lie and their mistake. Let's discuss initial torque on the Metacycle. So, the initial torque is software limited, so when you go full throttle, there's about 400 or so milliseconds of gradual increase, which, while it will definitely be felt by experienced riders, will not at all be a problem for casuals coming from a scooter or outright little to no riding experience. My guess on why they engineered it that way is that it would stop accidentally dropping your Metacycle at launch, which, while it would be very unlikely for seasoned riders, is a safety consideration nonetheless. Welcome to some, not to others. Moving on to sustained speed, both of us riders at our different body sizes, drag, and weight saw a top speed of 75 miles per hour in sports mode. In normal drive mode, the top speed is capped at 65 miles per hour. Once the Meta gets to that speed, it just wouldn't go any faster. Again, that's different from the advertised 80 mile per hour top speed. For me, it sustained that top speed of 75 miles per hour for a good 10 seconds or so before settling gradually to low 70s while still at full throttle. And now's a good time to talk about the fact that sports mode, while it unlocks the most torque out of your Meta, is initially a bit of a hit and miss situation trying to catch when it will turn itself off, whether you're at low 40 miles per hour or when you're closer to max speed. Neither the owner or I were able to put an exact time or pattern of deactivation on it, but for me, the last time I tested it, it stayed on for about a minute or so. Then I saw it turn off abruptly, dropping the sustained performance instantly. Good to note that it turned off while I was at the max 75 mph speed during my last sustained speed test. The time before that, I was around the 40 mph mark when it turned off, so it seems to be set on a timer here, probably about the 1 minute mark. Let's move on to the question of whether the Metacycle has regen braking or not. So the quick answer is no. No matter what that slight drag was that I felt, we have information from a Sondors employee about there being no regen braking on any Metacycle as of this week. So even if there's resistance in the motor when the throttle is released, it's not regenerating any charge back to it. So there's that. But essentially, the moment you release the throttle, it feels like you deployed a kid-sized parachute with holes punched in, so while you feel some drag, it's not strong. At least nowhere near as strong as, say, an electric car. The brakes on the Metacycle are not as conventional as a regular motorcycle. Let me explain. See, the Metacycle is built like a scooter or a bicycle, so the rear brake is on the left handle instead of a brake pedal, while the front brake is on the right handle. The brakes are quite noisy, as though they weren't well lubricated. I spoke to the owner about it. He agreed and said, as a matter of fact, that he already considered changing out the brake fluid to something thicker to dampen that noise. The seat is okay at best for short commutes on less than poor roads, but after a few minutes on the trip, I found myself adjusting, trying to find comfort. After about 30 minutes on the road, you do start to feel ready to get off for a quick standing brake. The seats feel narrow and could use more padding and width, so third-party modders, keep that in mind and thank me later. Better yet, give me 7% royalty in perpetuity on sales. Sondors did say they plan on offering passenger pegs for the Metacycle, but with the size of the bike and the seat losing almost half of its real estate to that slanted design, I just don't see how a second person could comfortably fit behind a rider. With the padding thinner and thinner as it nears the rear edge of the body, it gets less and less comfortable to sit. And even for smaller body types, I just don't think it's possible for two to ride the Metacycle. Suspension is stiff, and a rider my weight and height could benefit from more compression dampening for better extended comfort while riding. Sitting sinks down the seat and shocks proportional to your weight. The owner, at under 150 pounds, says his ride feels stiff and rugged, and I, at over 250 pounds, feel that there's no longer enough dampening left for me on rough roads. So I'd say the sweet spot would be a rider between 150 to 180 pounds. Suspension is not adjustable as an available feature with the Metacycle, but I'm sure owners with time and experience will tweak it to their liking. I also wondered, but never found this question answered anywhere: what does the Metacycle actually sound like? I attempted to capture this, and don't mind the wind noise, but here goes. Nope. So yeah, nothing too spectacular there. There are other electric motorcycles that have a cool wheezing sound to the motor, but Sondors obviously did not have that R&D budget in mind when building this budget-friendly bike. all good. So let's talk about the phone charger compartment a bit, because I noticed something I didn't expect with it. I didn't get to record this, but I tried putting my phone inside and closing it, but it wouldn't even fit. I own an iPhone 13 Pro Max as of the time of this video, with a case on that I wouldn't really consider bulky at all. And yeah, it just didn't make it into the accepted phone size to keep in that compartment for Sondors. I'm a bit disappointed in that, but it's no biggie. I'll be slotting that in my Metarack 1 from Metarack.io. If you don't know about the Metarack, it's a brand new bag built for the void of the Metacycle. Only 300 of those are being manufactured and shipped, and pre-orders have started and will end once that limit of 300 orders has been reached. A down payment of $100 secures one for you. More information about that in my review video I'll post a link to on the top right corner. But yeah, I was very surprised that my use case and my phone, out of all other ones, just didn't fit. I'll cover anything else that I may have missed here in another video. Just say the word in the comment section, but for now, I'll give my honest, much better informed take on the Metacycle. If you're looking for sports bike specs, torque, top speed, handling, seat positioning, this is not it. If, however, you're looking for a cool bike you're simply wanting to take on a fun cruise by the shore, quick errands, or a decent commute to work and back, this is plenty power, range, and cool factor to cover any of those scenarios. You're not carrying this on the highway and attempting to overtake other vehicles. While the Metacycle is highway legal, you don't want to get anyone aggro riding on this because you simply will not be able to outpace tailgaters. Though absolutely no bike is ever really safe, the Metacycle, being an EV with relatively no audible noise to alert drivers of your presence on a busy highway, you want to take extra safety precautions and render yourself extra visible through your choice of gear. But at the same time, again, being an EV, you get to hear things you never could before, like the sound of a car coming from behind, and to be more spatially aware since it's a silent ride. The seating is by far my biggest complaint on the Metacycle, and the suspension, not far behind, is my next one. I'm on the taller and weightier end of the spectrum at 6'3" and just over 250 pounds, big boned and can't do much about it, and riding the Metacycle, I have to be honest, is definitely not the most comfortable of rides. It'll make you want to take breaks often to avoid a bad back. The larger you are, the thinner the Metacycle seems for you as a rider, and there simply isn't enough seat real estate to comfortably, I'm just gonna say it as it is, rest those royal cheeks on. Both I and the owner, who's a faithful rider since the early 90s, agree that from our perspective and experience, the Metacycle's tuning is just not the best. Some things need a bit more travel, others need some tightening or some lubrication. But as a package, it's definitely appealing. Is the Metacycle worth the price tag of $5,000 or $5,700 to be exact, with the not so white glove delivery fee it was pre-ordered for? Yeah. Is it worth it at the new up price of $6,500 or around $7,000 to $7,200 with the delivery fee? Yeah, you get a lot more thrill from a Sondors Metacycle than that e-bike the same price in your neighbor's garage parked beside his Porsche Taycan. This might sound off to some, but follow me, I promise it'll make sense. So, the Sondors Metacycle is by far one of the best looking and performing electric scooters today. Yes, because of its looks, most people have the Metacycle in the wrong category when it comes to what it's supposed to replace in your collection and where it was meant to fit in the market. The Sondors team may have done a poor marketing job making it seem like it's the future of motorcycles. It's a scooter with a really futuristic, cool motorcycle frame to it. All in all, after riding this Metacycle, I can absolutely tell you that it is well worth the wait, and that if you pre-order yours without any false expectations and forfeiting the obviously overestimated claims from Sondors, short of a few kinks here and there, you will be very satisfied with your purchase. the Metacycle is unapologetically a head turner and a conversation starter. I mean, in the short 3 hours I had with it, I must have sold a handful of onlookers to Sondors for free just answering their questions. Speaking of which, if you have more questions unanswered or if I missed anything good to know, I'll be doing a follow-up review on demand, so now's the time to slap those questions in the comment section while they're fresh on your mind. I hope you enjoyed today's review. If you did, a sub to this channel would be super appreciated. Thanks for watching. Look out for my next review video of the Metacycle head-to-head with the Rivet Anthem, and until next time, this has been Trevor with MetaReady, signing out.